Jack Miller has once again found himself at the heart of MotoGP's political storm, but this time, Dorna Sports and Liberty Media appear to have played a decisive role in his survival. The Australian is not only one of the most marketable figures on the grid, but also one of the few fluent English-speaking riders in a championship where Spanish and Italian voices dominate. With no American or British representation in the Premier class, Miller alongside KTM's Brad Binder remains crucial to engaging audiences in key English-speaking markets. The situation around Miller's Pramac seat has been anything but straightforward. After parting ways with KTM and facing uncertainty about his future, the Australian was handed a last-minute lifeline by Pramac boss Paolo Campinotti. Still, the arrival of Toprak Razgatlioglu inevitably placed Miller and Miguel Oliveira head-to-head for survival. It seemed only a matter of time before one of them would be pushed aside. Behind the scenes, however, the politics of nationality played a major role. Both Sergio Garcia and Manuel Gonzalez were lined up as potential replacements, but according to reports, Dorna and Liberty closed the door on both Spaniards. Their reasoning was simple: the grid is already heavily saturated with 9 Spanish riders, and the sport's leaders want broader representation. This decision directly benefited Miller, who, despite his inconsistency on track, remains a vital piece in MotoGP's global puzzle. Adding another layer to the story, Yamaha's Japanese management were firmly in Miller's corner. His vast experience, particularly in adapting to new machinery, is expected to prove invaluable in developing Yamaha's much-anticipated V4 engine. For Dorna, this isn't just about lap times. It's about balancing competitive results with international marketability, and Miller ticks both boxes. Should MotoGP prioritize rider talent and results above all else, or is it right for Dorna and Liberty to step in and protect certain riders for the sake of global markets and nationality diversity? Looking ahead, the championship is bracing for an even bigger shake-up in 2026. While Thailand loses its sole representative with Somkiat Chantra's departure, Brazil makes a triumphant return with Diogo Moreira, perfectly timed with the reinstatement of the Brazilian GP. At the same time, the arrival of Toprak Razgatlioglu promises to electrify the fanbase, with Turkish supporters ready to flood MotoGP in numbers unseen before. The shift in national representation suggests that while Spain and Italy remain powerhouses, their grip on the sport may finally be loosening. For Jack Miller, the political game has become just as important as the lap times. His presence on the grid represents more than a race result. It represents a bridge to fans in markets that MotoGP cannot afford to lose. Without him, English-speaking audiences would have little direct connection to the championship. This is one of the reasons Dorna's intervention has caused such debate. Protecting a rider for commercial purposes is not unheard of, but rarely has it been so transparent. What adds intrigue is how this decision affects Moto2 talents like Manuel Gonzalez. The Spaniard has been knocking on the door of MotoGP with consistent performances, and being blocked at the final hurdle could create resentment among young riders who feel opportunities are scarce. Gonzalez in particular is viewed as one of the most polished riders outside the Premier class, and many insiders argue he has done more than enough to justify a seat. On the flip side, supporters of Dorna's stance insist that MotoGP has already reached saturation with Spanish representation. With nearly half of the grid hailing from Spain, critics believe the sport risks alienating fans elsewhere if fresh nationalities are continually overlooked. For Liberty Media, the situation is even clearer. The sport must expand globally, and that means riders like Miller, Razgatlioglu and Moreira are strategically more valuable than yet another Spaniard. Yamaha, meanwhile, are breathing a sigh of relief. Keeping Miller means they retain an experienced hand to guide the early stages of their V4 project. Developing a brand new engine concept requires not only raw speed, but also technical feedback from a rider who has ridden for different manufacturers. Miller's years at Ducati and KTM give him a depth of understanding that few others possess, and this may prove to be the most decisive factor in Yamaha's backing. Pramac themselves are quite content with how things unfolded. Having Razgatlioglu on board guarantees global attention, while retaining Miller ensures continuity and experience in the garage. The Italian team has always thrived on balancing star power with development stability, and this combination could be their strongest lineup in years, provided Miller can rediscover his consistency. Of course, Miguel Oliveira is the rider who loses most in this political battle. Despite his strong following in Portugal and flashes of brilliance on track, his career has stalled in recent seasons. Yamaha's decision to sideline him in favour of Miller sends a clear message. Commercial weight and development expertise can trump short-term form. Oliveira may yet return in 2027, but by then, the landscape of MotoGP could look very different. The broader concern, however, is what this means for MotoGP's sporting integrity. When commercial interests are seen to override sporting merit, fans inevitably begin to question whether the best riders are always on the grid. While Liberty Media's influence aims to grow the sports audience, some purists worry that MotoGP could edge towards a business-first approach that undermines its raw racing spirit. Still, there is no denying that the upcoming seasons will be defined by this delicate balance between competition and marketability. With Razgatlioglu, Moreira and Miller set to headline in 2026, MotoGP looks poised to capture new fans across Turkey, Brazil and Australia. Whether this expansion strengthens the championship's appeal or sparks further controversy remains to be seen, but one thing is certain: the politics off the track are just as fiery as the battles on it. Insiders within the paddock suggest that Liberty Media's long-term vision is to mirror Formula One's global diversity, where representation from multiple continents drives both commercial growth and fan engagement. By ensuring Miller's place alongside emerging talents from Turkey and Brazil, MotoGP is clearly setting the stage for a more international identity, one that could redefine the championship's audience over the next decade. At the same time, the gamble is obvious. If Miller cannot deliver results on track, criticism will only grow louder. Fans and rivals alike will question whether a rider's passport has become more valuable than their performance. For now, Miller has the backing of Dorna, Liberty and Yamaha, but in MotoGP, loyalty is short-lived, and 2026 may prove to be the most critical season of his career. If you've enjoyed this deep dive into the latest MotoGP drama, make sure you hit subscribe and stay tuned. There's plenty more breaking stories, paddock politics, and race analysis coming your way all season long.